All right, testing. Good. 7 billion people, 196 countries, and more than 6,500 languages spoken across the globe. It is a challenge to comprehend these numbers. I mean, we struggle with communication each and every day, whether with friends, family members, or people in our workplaces. And, by the way, we're mostly speaking English. So to begin to comprehend the idea of 6,500 languages is trivial in itself, let alone learning them, right? Not exactly. Italy, Austria, and Belgium all require their high school students to learn at least 2 foreign languages by the time that they graduate, often beginning in elementary school. Most schools in Europe have these requirements. In South America, learning a foreign language makes a fundamental difference when applying for jobs later on in life. America's national high school requirements for students, I couldn't find those statistics anywhere. Now, this is not the previous generation's fault. Until the 21st century, we were somewhat socially isolated from the rest of the world on our side of the Atlantic, compared to the close proximity of those countries in Europe or Southeastern Asia. Now, in the face of globalization, ideas are revolutionizing, and the vitality of language is being accentuated through a new American perspective. We, as individuals thriving in the most advanced society the earth has ever seen, have more opportunities than any individual before us to learn language. Here's a bit of my story. I grew up in a bilingual household with a loud Brazilian mother who would stand on top of tables at Cold Stone Creamery every other market period to announce, in her Portuguese accent, my elementary school successes to the rather amused general public. Throughout the performance, my sister and I cowered under the chairs with my not-so-amused American father. Even through embarrassing moments like these, I learned that the opportunities I had growing up were very rare. Each year, we visit my family in Brazil, and thankfully, I have been able to read, write, and speak with these relatives as readily as I can with my American relatives, due to the fact that my mother established from the day that my sister and I were born that she would only speak Portuguese with us so that we could grow up bilingual. I chose to take French when I began high school, and at first I was wary of starting a new language. I have never looked back. The opportunity to see the vibrancy of communication during a French exchange about 2 years ago over the summer has been pivotal in my language learning experience. When I came back from France, I realized that I did not want to stop at French, but I wondered how I could continue on this language learning path. It was here that I discovered a community of learners through different YouTube channels where polyglots ignited this community. It was here that I fell upon different podcasts and international radio stations, like Italian Pod 101 and BBC's Language Resources. And it was here that I found different phone applications like Duolingo, where you can learn so many different languages, and all of this for free. I was inundated with opportunities that at that point in my 15 years of life, I never even knew existed. I have learned that by communicating with different individuals through language, I can make greater and meaningful connections with these individuals. The prospects that the 21st century have offered us are different than any other century before. This century, this is revolutionary. So why is it important to learn different languages? Some people say that you can think just fine with one language under your belt, which is true. You can be very successful with one language. But the doors open even wider when you learn more. The truth is, language defines how you think. If you speak English, you're going to think in English. If you speak Hebrew, you're going to think in Hebrew. There's a tribe in the Amazon rainforest called the Pirahã, which does not use the past tense. They are therefore incapable of thinking in the past tense. Their lives revolve completely around the present. This unique case study allowed linguists to study how language furthers our knowledge and our ways of thinking. This does not have to be with an entire tribe, however, to serve as an example. Oftentimes, there are specific words in different languages that cannot be translated to English or another language, also only using one word. My pronunciation is far from perfect, but here are a few of my favorites. Jayus, an Indonesian word meaning a joke so poorly told and unfunny that one cannot help but laugh. Saudade, a Portuguese word that means longing for someone or something that you love. Iksuarpok, an Inuit word meaning let's go outside to see if anyone else is coming. And tartle, a Scottish word that has no exact translation to English. It would be something along the lines of the act of hesitating because you forgot someone's name. You see, language expands our vocabulary in various facets of learning. The more languages you speak, the more ways in which you can think. Dr. Thomas Back from Edinburgh School of Philosophy, Psychology, and Language Sciences found that bilinguals, independent of whether these were native bilinguals or individuals who had learned the language later on in their lives, were more successful during attention tests than those individuals that only spoke one language. When Dr. Back later on did a study with Dr. Alati in India, they found that those individuals who had learned more than one language from an early age were more likely to slow the onset of Alzheimer's as well as the onset of dementia by more than 4 years. This pursued Dr. Back to study the advantages of learning a language later on into adulthood. In his new study, Dr. Back found that young adult bilinguals were more likely to do better on cognitive tests, and they were able to do this, linguists suggest, because those individuals that speak more than one language have to practice distinguishing relevant auditory information. While the studies performed were relatively small, Dr. Back and his fellow colleagues agree that learning a language at any given point in one's life can maintain and expand cognitive function. Now, it does not only stop here. Some people say that adults cannot learn different languages because their brains are not able to make changes later on into adulthood. Recent studies have proven otherwise. A professor from the University of Chicago, Professor Mary Morgan, has studied how electrophysiology affects changes in the brain during learning. This professor used electrophysiology and used an artificial language, which is a language created by linguists in order to study language in a controlled environment, and taught this simple language to one group by teaching the rules of the language, while teaching the other group through immersion. While both groups did learn, the brain scans of the immersed group were much more similar to those of native speakers than those individuals who had learned through formal instruction. The study also showed that adults that were better at learning through patterns learn better through immersion, illustrating that each individual learns in his or her own way. 6 months later, the immersed group was still able to remember the information from this artificial language, even though they had no way of practicing this at home in any way, shape, or form, illustrating that adults can learn through immersion, just like children. Perhaps those individuals who claim that adults cannot learn language were teaching it the wrong way. While children have the advantage of learning quickly and quickly acquiring a native accent, adults have the advantage of knowing how they learn. Now, while it is important to know the rules of grammar and sentence structure, it is also important to focus on immersion because it encourages fluency and authenticity. While adults have the advantage of learning language, they also have the advantage of knowing pragmatics, or the social use of language, and can put this to use when learning language in a realistic environment. Each individual learns in his or her own way. Adults can use years of knowledge to encourage this personalized and successful language learning experience. Perhaps speaking is not your strength. Start through reading and writing. Do you have trouble with an accent? Listen to some Dutch podcasts, watch some Arabic movies, play a little K-pop. What disappoints me sometimes is this idea that people get that they're not good at foreign language, as if it were only a subject in school. There is no good and there is no bad at foreign language. Language is a form of art, and this is what we must focus on each and every day. What's this here? A key. They come in many different colors. Silver, brass, gold. I hear that people even paint their keys with nail polish these days to add a little sparkle. Anyway, if you look very closely at a key, you will see ridges on its side. Each of these ridges is intricately designed, each curve specialized for the lock that it opens. And when you take the ridges from one key and you add them to the ridges of another key, you get the master key. The more ridges you have, the closer you are to forming this master key. Language is a blob of metal. You are the locksmith. When you were first born, the first words that you heard were melded into your first curve. As you learned your first language, the primary language lock was opened. Now is your chance to learn more, so you can unlock the second lock, Italian, then German, Japanese, any language you want. Granted, the master key might be a bit of a challenge, but in this century, you have over 6,500 languages to choose from. Together, through our own unique ways, we can build a greater understanding for language and communication for individuals and cultures across the world. Thank you.